The battle was won, but the work was far from over. The UHN's Indomitable drifted in space, her hull scarred and smoking while small craft moved around her like worried birds around a wounded animal. Inside the carrier, damage control teams worked around the clock, cutting away destroyed sections and patching holes with whatever materials they could find. Chief Engineer Taewon Beck had been awake for 36 hours straight, moving from one crisis to the next. His uniform was scorched and stained, his face streaked with grease and sweat. He stood in what had been the forward observation deck, now open to space, sealed off by emergency bulkheads. "We lost 18 meters of forward hull," he told Captain Daeho Kim through a communicator. "3 decks are completely gone. The structural frame is intact, but it's going to take weeks to rebuild this section properly. Can we make it back to Nexus Prime?" Daeho asked. Taewon looked around at the destruction, then at his teams working in full spacesuits among the wreckage. "Sir, we could make it back to Earth if we had to. This ship was built to take damage and keep fighting. Give me 3 days and I'll have her flying straight enough to make any journey you need." That was the difference, Daeho thought. The alien ships were masterpieces of engineering, built to avoid damage through shields and speed. The Indomitable was built assuming damage would happen, designed to survive it through sheer stubborn resilience. In sick bay, the medical teams were dealing with their own challenges. 37 crew members had been injured in the plasma lance hit, ranging from minor burns to critical injuries. Dr. Yuna Kang moved between beds, checking on patients while her staff worked with focused intensity. One young pilot, his leg broken in 3 places, tried to smile when she approached. "Doc, am I going to be able to fly again?" Yuna checked his chart. "Give it 6 weeks and you'll be back in a cockpit." "But you're grounded until then, understand?" "Yes, ma'am." She moved on, but the pilot's question stayed with her. These people had volunteered to put themselves in danger, to fight against enemies they had never seen before, all to prove that humanity deserved its place among the stars. The responsibility weighed heavily. On the bridge, Daeho received a communication request from the Coalition fleet. High Commander Veltros appeared on the screen, his crystalline form still showing cracks from the battle. Behind him, Daeho could see the damaged interior of the Celestial Spear, alien crew members working on repairs with equipment that looked impossibly advanced compared to human tools. "Captain Kim, I am transmitting our casualty reports and damage assessments to all ships," Veltros said. "I wanted to personally thank you again for your actions. Without your intervention, my ship would have been destroyed and hundreds of my crew killed." Daeho nodded. "We did what any Allied vessel would do, Commander." "Perhaps," Veltros replied. "But I suspect not every Allied vessel could have done what you did." "I have been reviewing the battle data, Captain. Your ship took a direct hit from a weapon that should have destroyed you instantly. How did you survive?" "Armor," Daeho said simply. "Multiple layers of it with compartmentalized sections behind. When the outer layers failed, the inner layers held. When compartments were breached, we sealed them off. It's not elegant, but it works." "And your fighters," Veltros continued. "They maneuvered through the asteroid field without computer assistance. Our analysts cannot determine how your pilots achieved such coordination without AI support." "They trained," Daeho said. "Hours and hours of training until their responses became instinct. Our pilots don't rely on computers to tell them what to do. They think, they adapt, they react." Veltros was quiet for a moment. "We have relied too heavily on technology. We assumed it would always provide the advantage. But your people have something we lost long ago, Captain. You remember how to fight when everything is broken and failing?" Commander Hyunjin Lee joined Daeho on the bridge, carrying a data pad with the fighter wing status reports. 23 fighters had been damaged in the battle, but only 2 had been completely destroyed. The pilots had managed to nurse crippled craft back to the carrier, coaxing damaged engines and patched fuel lines into giving them just a few more minutes of operation. "That's another thing we do well," Daeho said to Veltros. "We improvise. When systems fail, we find another way. When weapons run out, we use whatever's available. It's not pretty, but it keeps us alive." Ensign Banhua Shin was monitoring communications when he suddenly called out, "Captain, I'm picking up a distress signal. It's coming from deeper in the asteroid field." Daeho felt his stomach tighten. "Coalition ships?" "No, sir. The signal is using old-style radio transmission. It's one of the pirate vessels. Looks like they got damaged trying to flee and their engines failed." The bridge went quiet. Everyone knew what this meant. The pirates had killed coalition crew members, had tried to destroy the Indomitable, had shown no mercy during the battle. By all rights, they should be left to their fate. But Deho thought about the values that humanity claimed to represent, the principles that made them different from those who preyed on the weak. Launch a rescue shuttle, he ordered. Bring them in, but keep them under guard. They're prisoners of war, and they'll be treated according to the rules of warfare. Veltros heard this exchange over the still-open channel. Captain, those pirates do not deserve your mercy. They are criminals who have murdered innocent traitors and refused all offers of surrender. Maybe, Deho replied, but we don't abandon people to die in space, even enemies. That's not who we are. An hour later, the rescue shuttle returned with 12 pirate crew members, half of them injured. They were a mixed group of different alien species, outcasts and criminals who had banded together for profit. They looked at their human captors with a mixture of fear and confusion. One of them, a reptilian being with scarred scales, spoke through a translator. Why did you save us? We tried to kill you. The human security officer shrugged. Captain's orders. You're prisoners now, but you'll be fed, your injuries will be treated, and you'll be turned over to proper authorities at Nexus Prime. The pirate stared. Your people are strange. Yeah, we get that a lot. Lieutenant Sun-Hee Cho was in the pilot's ready room, debriefing her squadron. They were exhausted, running on adrenaline and coffee, but also exhilarated. They had faced real combat and survived. More than survived, they had excelled. Blue 3, your maneuver around that asteroid was textbook perfect, Sun-Hee said. Blue 7, you saved Blue 9's life with that covering fire. Good work. One of the younger pilots raised his hand. Lieutenant, the alien pilots we saw in the recordings, they all flew in perfect formation. Never deviated from their flight plans. We were all over the place. How did we do better? Sun-Hee smiled. Because perfect formation only works when everything goes according to plan. In combat, nothing goes according to plan. We were trained to think independently, to make our own decisions in the moment. That's what won the fight. In the hangar bay, maintenance crews were working on the damaged fighters. They used welding torches and replacement parts, working with tools that would have looked familiar to aircraft mechanics from a century ago. An alien observer from one of the coalition ships watched them work, fascinated by the process. Your repair methods are very manual, the alien noted. Why don't you use molecular reassembly or structural reformation? One of the human mechanics, a woman with grease under her fingernails, looked up. Because this works. I can see what I'm fixing. I can test it with my hands. I know it's done right. Maybe it takes longer, but I trust it. Interesting philosophy, the alien said thoughtfully. Back on the bridge, Daiho stood looking at the damage reports and casualty lists. They had won, but the cost was real. People had died, more were injured, and the ship was damaged. Yet somehow, morale was higher than ever. The crew moved with new confidence, knowing they had faced the test and passed. Admiral Myung-han's face appeared on the communication screen from Earth. She looked tired but proud. Captain Kim, I've been getting reports from the Coalition fleet. They're calling what you did remarkable. We just did our job, Admiral. No, Deho, you proved something important. You proved that humans have a place out here, that our methods and our values matter. The Galactic Coalition is built on species that achieved peace through technological superiority. They forgot what it means to actually fight for survival. So what happens now? Deho asked. Myung smiled. Now we go back to Nexus Prime, and we show them what humanity really brings to the table. Not just weapons and tactics, but the will to use them in defense of others. That's worth more than any quantum drive or energy shield. The Indomitable began its journey back to Nexus Prime, damaged, but undefeated. Around it, the Coalition ships took up escort positions, no longer dismissive but respectful. The primitive supercarrier had proven itself in the one arena where technology alone could never triumph, actual combat, where courage and skill mattered as much as firepower. In the forward observation deck, now sealed and repaired enough for crew access, Taewon stood with his engineering team. They looked at the patch job they had done, the visible scars on the hull that would remain until proper shipyard repairs could be completed. It's not pretty, one engineer said. Taewon smiled. No, but it's strong. And that's what matters. The pirate dreadnought fired. The plasma lance was beautiful in its terrible way, a beam of superheated matter that crossed the distance between ships at nearly the speed of light. It struck the Indomitable's forward section with the force of a small star, temperature readings spiking to levels that should have vaporized anything in its path. The outer armor melted instantly. Hull plating designed to withstand conventional weapons turned to slag under the incredible heat. The beam burned through 3 decks before the ship's internal structure finally began to resist. But the Indomitable had not been built like the sleek alien vessels, with their elegant single-hull designs and quantum shields. It had been built like every human warship for the past 1,000 years, with redundancy as the core principle. Multiple hulls. Compartmentalized sections. Blast doors that could seal in milliseconds. Armor that was layered specifically because engineers knew no single defense was perfect. The ship absorbed the hit like a boxer taking a punch, rolling with it instead of trying to deflect it. On the bridge, alarms screamed. Captain Daeho Kim gripped his command chair as the ship shuddered beneath him. Smoke filled the air despite the ventilation systems working overtime. The main screen flickered, showing damage reports cascading across multiple decks. Forward sections 4 through 6 compromised, Ensign Bonhua Shin reported, his voice shaking but steady. We've got fires on Deck 7. Casualties coming in. Damage control teams are responding, added another officer. Chief Engineer Taewon is rerouting power around the damaged sections. Deep in the engineering spaces, Chief Engineer Taewon Baek worked with his hands inside an open panel, rewiring connections while plasma conduits hissed dangerously close to his head. His team moved around him with practiced efficiency, each person knowing their role without needing orders. This was what they had trained for, what every damage control drill had prepared them for. Bypass the primary grid and route through secondary, Taewon shouted over the noise. I don't care if it's not optimal, I need power to the forward guns now. On the bridge, Daeho watched the pirate dreadnought beginning to recharge its plasma lance. They had maybe 90 seconds before it could fire again. The celestial spear was still helpless behind them, and the Indomitable had just proven it could survive one hit. But a second shot in the same place would punch through to the reactor core. All batteries target that dreadnought, Daeho ordered. I want everything we have hitting it right now. The Indomitable's weapons were not subtle. Railguns fired solid slugs using electromagnetic acceleration. Missile batteries launched hundreds of rockets with simple but effective guidance systems. Point defense cannons that could track and destroy incoming projectiles turned their attention to offensive fire. All of it was old technology, proven through centuries of warfare. The barrage hit the pirate dreadnought like a hammer. Its shields absorbed the first wave, then the second. But the third wave started getting through. Kinetic weapons didn't care about shield harmonics or frequency tuning. They were just mass moving at high velocity, and eventually physics won. A railgun slug punched through the dreadnought's forward shield emitter. The shield collapsed on that side, and suddenly, dozens of missiles found unprotected hull. Explosions rippled across the pirate ship's surface. Commander Hyunjin Lee saw the opening from his command station. All bombers concentrate fire on that dreadnought. I want every torpedo we have hitting that wound. The human bomber wings had been savaging the smaller pirate ships, but now they turned as one toward the bigger target. Lieutenant Sun Hee Cho led her fighter squadron as escort, clearing away pirate defenders with ruthless efficiency. Her hands moved across her controls with fluid grace, her fighter dancing through enemy fire like it had been choreographed. Blue Squadron, keep them off our bombers, she transmitted. Reds, you're with me. We're going for their turrets. The fighters screamed toward the dreadnought, their pilots pushing engines to the limits. Alien observers watching from their damaged ships couldn't believe what they were seeing. The human fighters moved with coordination that should have required AI assistance, but somehow these pilots were doing it all manually, adapting to threats in real time. Sun Hee locked onto a turret cluster and fired her remaining missiles. The explosions were small but precise, destroying targeting sensors and weapon mounts. Around her, the rest of her squadron did the same, systematically degrading the dreadnought's defensive capabilities. The bombers came in right behind them. Heavy torpedoes launched in perfect sequence, each one aimed at the growing wound in the dreadnought's hull. The ship tried to turn, tried to bring undamaged shields to bear, but the human weapons kept coming. More hits, more damage, more systems failing. On the Indomitable, damage control teams were still fighting fires and sealing breaches. In sickbay, doctors worked on casualties with the same desperate efficiency. The ship had been hurt, but it was still fighting. Every system had been designed with the assumption that damage would occur, that things would break, that perfect operation was impossible in combat. So there were backup systems for the backup systems, manual overrides for computer failures, crew members trained to operate equipment in smoke-filled rooms with failing power. It was messy and complicated and utterly necessary. "Sir, the Dreadnought's lance is charging again," Bonwa warned. Deho checked his tactical display. 60 seconds, maybe less. The Indomitable couldn't take another hit in the same spot, but moving would expose the celestial spear to fire. He opened a channel to engineering. "Taewon, I need emergency power to engines." "Everything you can give me." "Sir, if I divert more power from damage control..." "Do it. We need to move this ship." Taewon hesitated for only a moment. Then he started giving orders, pulling power from life support, from non-essential systems, from anywhere he could find it. The ship groaned as energy flooded into the massive fusion drives. "Helm, as soon as you have power, rotate us," Deho ordered. "Present our starboard side to that dreadnought. Put fresh armor between us and them." The Indomitable began to turn, its massive bulk moving with agonizing slowness. On the pirate dreadnought, the plasma lance reached 90% charge. "We're not going to make it," someone whispered. Deho's jaw tightened. "Yes, we are. Hyunjin, I need those bombers to hit that lance now. Forget the hull, go for the weapon itself." Hyunjin didn't question the order. "All bombers, new target." The big gun on that dreadnought's dorsal surface. "Everything you have left." The bombers broke off their attack run and curved back around. They had already expended most of their torpedoes, but they still had their railguns, smaller versions of the ones mounted on the carrier. They came in low and fast, fire from the dreadnought's remaining turrets filling space around them. 2 bombers were hit and spun away, crippled. The rest pressed on. Their railguns fired in sequence, solid slugs hammering at the charging plasma lance. It was a desperate move, trying to destroy a weapon by shooting it while it was active. The slugs impacted just as the lance reached full charge. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the entire dorsal section of the dreadnought exploded. The plasma that had been contained and focused for the lance's beam had nowhere to go. It tore through the ship's internal structure, a chain reaction of destruction that turned the dreadnought into an expanding ball of fire and debris. The shockwave hit the Indomitable hard, but the ship had finished its rotation. Debris bounced off fresh armor, and the carrier weathered the blast. On the bridge, Deho allowed himself a moment to breathe. Around him, his crew was doing the same. "Damage report," he said. "Forward section still compromised, but holding," Bonhua replied. "Fires are under control. We've got casualties, but Sick Bay is handling them. The Coalition fleet? The Celestial Spear is crippled but stable. 3 other ships took heavy damage. But sir, the remaining pirate ships are breaking off. They're scattering." Deho looked at the tactical display. The pirate fleet had come expecting an easy victory over technologically superior, but tactically naive aliens. Instead, they had run into humans who fought with a brutal practicality that no amount of advanced technology could match. The smaller pirate ships were fleeing in every direction, abandoning their wounded and dead. The battle was over. Commander Hyunjin appeared on the screen. "Sir, we've got fighters with damaged engines and low fuel. Request permission to begin recovery operations." Granted. "Bring our people home." As the fighters began landing on the battered carrier, Deho opened a channel to the Celestial Spear. High Commander Veltros appeared. His crystalline form cracked and dimmed, but his voice was steady. "Captain Kim, your intervention saved my ship and my crew. I miscalculated badly." Deho kept his voice neutral. "We do what's necessary, Commander. That's what mutual defense means." There was a long pause. Then Veltros said quietly, "Yes, I am beginning to understand that." The Forge sector earned its name from the collapsed star at its center, a dead sun that had scattered debris across millions of cubic kilometers. Asteroids tumbled through the darkness in chaotic patterns, their surfaces rich with rare metals that drew traders and pirates in equal measure. The Coalition fleet arrived in a precise formation, their ships gleaming with energy shields that created halos of blue light. The Indomitable held position at the rear of the formation, exactly where High Commander Veltros had ordered them. Captain Deho Kim watched the tactical display as alien warships deployed their quantum sensor drones and began scanning the asteroid field. Commander Hyunjin Lee stood beside him, the Air Wing commander reviewing flight plans on his datapad. "Rear security," Hyunjin muttered. "They've put us on babysitting duty." "That's exactly what they think we're good for," Deho replied. "Let them underestimate us." Keep the wings on standby, but don't launch yet. The Coalition's battle plan appeared on the main screen, transmitted from Veltros's flagship Celestial Spear. It was complex and elegant, using coordinated drone swarms and energy weapon strikes to flush pirates from their hiding spots. The quantum communication network would link every ship, allowing them to respond to threats in perfect synchronization. Deho studied it carefully. The plan assumed the pirates would behave predictably, retreating when faced with superior firepower. It assumed the quantum sensors would detect every threat. It assumed technology would overcome tactics. He had seen assumptions like that before in historical records. They rarely survived first contact with the enemy. "Sir, we're receiving the mission brief," said Ensign Banhua Shin. The young radar operator looked almost disappointed. "We're to maintain position and provide sensor coverage of the fleet's rear approach vectors. No offensive operations assigned." "Acknowledged," Deho said. He opened a private channel to Hyunjin. "Have Lieutenant Sun-hee prep her squadron anyway. Full weapons load, combat fuel mix." Hyunjin nodded, understanding. If something went wrong, they would be ready. The Coalition fleet advanced into the asteroid field with confidence. Their energy shields deflected the smaller debris, and their quantum sensors painted every rock, every fragment, every anomaly in perfect detail. It was an impressive display of technological superiority, but Banhua was frowning at his console. "Captain, I'm picking up something strange on conventional radar." "Strange how?" "The debris patterns aren't natural. See these clusters here and here?" He highlighted sections on his display. "They're too regular, like someone arranged them deliberately." Deho leaned forward. The Coalition sensors were quantum-based, designed to detect energy signatures and mass distributions at incredible range. But conventional radar, the kind humans had used for centuries, worked differently. It bounced electromagnetic waves off solid objects and measured the return. Simple, reliable, and apparently picking up something the advanced sensors missed. "Show me the full scan," Deho ordered. Banhua expanded the view. In the shadow of larger asteroids where gravitational distortions played havoc with quantum sensors, his radar painted definite artificial structures. Ships. Lots of them. "Those aren't small pirate raiders," Deho said slowly. "Those are capital ships. At least 5 of them. Should we warn the Coalition fleet?" Banhua asked. Before Deho could answer, space lit up with weapons fire. The pirates had waited until the Coalition fleet was fully committed to the asteroid field, surrounded by debris that limited maneuvering. Then they struck from multiple angles, their mass drivers hurling solid projectiles that tore through energy shields like they weren't there. The Celestial Spear took 3 hits in rapid succession. Its beautiful crystalline hull cracked, venting atmosphere in glittering streams. Other Coalition ships tried to return fire, but their energy weapons had been calibrated for small, fast targets. The pirate capital ships were huge and heavily armored, built to absorb punishment. Chaos flooded the communication channels. Orders and counter-orders overlapped as the neat battle plan collapsed. The quantum network that was supposed to coordinate everything became a liability, as ships tried to share too much information at once. Deho made his decision in seconds. "All hands battle stations. Helm full burn toward the combat zone. Hyunjin, launch all wings immediately." "Sir, we don't have authorization," someone protested. "Then I'll answer for it later. Move." The Indomitable surged forward, its fusion drives burning at maximum output. The aliens had mocked those drives as inefficient, but they were also nearly impossible to jam or disrupt. While Coalition ships struggled with their quantum drives glitching under electromagnetic interference, the human carrier accelerated like a thrown spear. On the flight deck, launch crews had been drilling for 3 days straight. They needed no computer coordination, no AI assistance. They used hand signals and experience, operating with the smooth efficiency of hundreds of practice runs. Fighter after fighter catapulted into space, their pilots already locked into combat mode. Lieutenant Sun-hee Cho led her squadron into the chaos with a grin on her face. Her fighter was old-fashioned by alien standards, with manual controls and simple but reliable systems. But she had been flying since she was 16, logging thousands of hours in atmospheric and space combat simulations. "Blue Squadron, form on me," she transmitted. "We're going manual." She cut her fighter's AI assistance and took direct control. Around her, 11 other pilots did the same. The alien ships relied on computer-predicted flight paths and automated targeting. Human pilots relied on instinct, reflexes, and the kind of situational awareness that no AI could replicate. They dove into the asteroid field, weaving between tumbling rocks with maneuvers that made the alien observers gasp. Sun-Hee's hands moved across her controls with practiced ease, her mind processing dozens of inputs simultaneously. There, a pirate gunship turning to fire on a crippled coalition frigate. She adjusted her vector, armed missiles, and released. The missiles were simple kinetic weapons with basic guidance systems. No quantum targeting, no energy matrices, just solid fuel and a warhead that exploded on impact. The pirate gunship's shields had been designed for energy weapons. The missiles punched through them like they weren't there. Across the battle space, human fighters demonstrated what humanity's violent history had taught them. Every pilot had studied historical air combat, from ancient dogfights to modern space engagements. They knew how to use terrain, how to predict enemy movement, how to coordinate without constant communication. The pirates, who had been winning easily against the confused coalition fleet, suddenly found themselves facing an enemy they didn't understand, an enemy that fought dirty, used tricks, and seemed completely unbothered by the electromagnetic interference that was crippling everyone else. Commander Hyun-jin coordinated the bomber wings, sending them after the pirate capital ships. The bombers carried railgun-launched torpedoes, weapons that used electromagnetic acceleration to achieve devastating velocities. The pirates' armor held against the first few hits. But the human doctrine was simple. If one hit doesn't work, use 10-dot torpedo after torpedo slammed into pirate hulls, each impact creating cascading damage. The pirates had never faced such sustained kinetic bombardment. Their shields flickered and failed. Their armor cracked and split. The Indomitable herself entered weapons range, and Deho gave the order his crew had been waiting for. Every gun battery opened fire simultaneously. Thousands of rounds per minute poured from the carrier's point defense systems. Larger railguns fired solid slugs the size of telephone poles. It wasn't elegant or sophisticated. It was industrial-scale violence. A pirate destroyer simply came apart under the withering fire, its structure unable to withstand the physical impacts. But the pirates weren't finished. Their largest ship, a dreadnought covered in weapon ports, turned toward the celestial spear. Energy crackled along its hull as it charged some kind of massive weapon. Deho sensors identified it as a plasma lance, capable of vaporizing a capital ship with a single shot. Beltros's flagship was crippled, unable to maneuver, its shields down. The pirate dreadnought had a clear shot. Deho looked at the tactical display, calculating distances and angles. The Indomitable could intercept, but it would mean putting his ship directly in the line of fire. His carrier had no energy shields, just armor and hope. He thought of his crew, 4,000 men and women who had trained their whole lives for a moment like this. He thought of Earth watching from light years away. He thought of the aliens who had laughed at his ship and called it primitive. Time to show them what primitive really meant. Helm. Put us between that dreadnought and the celestial spear. All power to forward sections. Engineering maximize damage control teams. His bridge crew stared at him for half a second, then jumped to execute. They understood what he was doing. They understood the risk. The Indomitable moved into position with agonizing slowness, a turtle trying to intercept a bullet. On the pirate dreadnought, the plasma lance reached full charge. Brace for impact, Deho ordered calmly, and prepare to return fire. Let's see whose ship is tougher. The massive shape of the UHNS Indomitable emerged from the quantum gate, like an ancient beast stepping into a world of glass and light. Captain Deho Kim stood on the bridge, watching the Nexus Prime station grow larger on the main screen. Around his carrier, dozens of alien vessels drifted with elegant curves and shimmering hulls that seemed to bend light itself. His ship, by contrast, looked exactly like what it was. A floating fortress of steel and titanium, built for one purpose only. They're staring at us. Sir, said Ensign Banhua Shin from the communication station. The young officer's voice carried a mix of pride and nervousness. Every ship in the area has turned their sensors our way. Deho allowed himself a small smile. Let them look. Make sure our approach is clean. I want no mistakes. The Indomitable measured over 2 kilometers from bow to stern. Its hull was covered in armor plating that showed the wear of 100 training exercises. Gun turrets lined its flanks, and the flight deck could launch 100 fighters in less than 10 minutes. To human eyes, it was beautiful. To the aliens gathering at Nexus Prime, it apparently looked like something from a museum. Ambassador Jiwan Park stood beside Daeho, her diplomatic uniform crisp and perfect. She had been humanity's voice to the Galactic Coalition for 3 months now, ever since first contact. Her expression remained neutral, but Daeho could see the tension in her shoulders. "Are you ready for this?" she asked quietly. "As ready as we'll ever be," Daeho replied. "The ship speaks for itself." They docked at one of the massive external berths, dwarfed by the station but still imposing in its brutal simplicity. Within the hour, Daeho and Jiwan were walking through corridors that felt more like art galleries than military installations. Alien species of every shape and size moved past them, some pausing to stare at the humans with expressions that ranged from curiosity to barely concealed amusement. The assembly hall was enormous, with a ceiling that seemed to stretch into infinity. Representatives from 47 different species sat in tiered sections, their translation devices creating a soft murmur of overlapping voices. At the center stood High Commander Veltros of the Etherian Dominion, his crystalline body refracting light in rainbow patterns. He was known as the Coalition's finest military mind, architect of a dozen successful campaigns. Jiwan stepped forward when called, her voice amplified throughout the chamber. "Honored delegates, I come before you to formally request humanity's inclusion in the Galactic Coalition's Mutual Defense Pact. Earth offers its full military support and cooperation." A rippling sound moved through the assembly. It took Daeho a moment to realize it was laughter. Veltros's voice rang out like crystal bells. "Ambassador Park, we have reviewed your military capabilities. Your technology is quaint. Fusion reactors when we use zero-point energy, projectile weapons when we have mastered directed energy, and that vessel in your berth." He paused and more laughter echoed. "Is that truly your most advanced warship?" Jiwon's face remained calm. "The UHNS Indomitable represents our largest carrier class, yes. It has served with distinction in our defensive fleet." "Distinction?" Veltros moved closer, his form shimmering. "Your ship uses chemical propulsion for atmospheric craft. It has no quantum shielding, no phase displacement, no neural coordination network. Counselors, I mean no disrespect to our new friends, but how can a species still firing metal slugs contribute to our advanced defense strategies?" Counselor Thrix, an insectoid being with compound eyes, clicked its mandibles thoughtfully. "High Commander, perhaps we should not dismiss them so quickly. Humans have survived on their world through significant challenges." "Survived?" Veltros repeated. "Yes, they survived their own violent history. But surviving and contributing to galactic security are vastly different propositions. Look at their combat doctrine." He gestured and holographic displays appeared showing human military exercises. They still practice boarding actions, hand-to-hand combat training. Their pilots fly manually rather than trusting to AI coordination. It's as if they never evolved past their primitive beginnings. Daeho felt his jaw tighten, but he remained silent. This was Jiwan's arena, not his. Jiwan spoke clearly. "Our methods may seem outdated, but they have proven effective across centuries of warfare. We offer practical experience and tactical flexibility." "Experience in fighting yourselves," another delegate called out. "What use is that against organized pirate fleets or territorial disputes between actual spacefaring civilizations?" The mood in the chamber was shifting from amusement to dismissal. Daeho could see Jiwan's argument failing before it truly began. These beings had achieved peace through technological superiority. They had automated so much of warfare that the messy, brutal reality of combat had become foreign to them. They saw human weapons and methods as relics, never stopping to consider why those methods had survived so long. Veltros held up one crystalline appendage. "However, in the spirit of fairness, I propose a solution. The Forge sector has been plagued by pirate activity for several cycles now. They raid trade convoys and hide in the asteroid debris fields. We are planning a military operation to clear them out." He turned to face Jiwan and Daeho directly. "Let humanity participate. Show us what your practical experience can accomplish. If you perform adequately, we will reconsider your petition." "And if we refuse?" Jiwan asked. "Then we have our answer about your commitment to mutual defense." It was a trap, Daeho realized. Accept and they would be sent into a combat zone where failure would justify rejection. Refuse and they would appear cowardly. Either way, Veltros had boxed them in. Jiwan looked back at Daeho. In that moment, words were unnecessary. They both knew what choice they had to make. Earth accepts, Ji-won said firmly. The UHN as Indomitable and her crew will participate in the Forge Sector operation. The assembly murmured approval. Veltros's form seemed to shimmer with satisfaction. Excellent. We depart in 3 standard days. I look forward to seeing your museum piece in action, Captain Kim. As they left the chamber, Daeho walked beside Ji-won in silence. Only when they reached a private corridor did she speak. They're setting us up to fail. I know, Daeho replied. They think we're a joke, something to laugh about over their energy drinks or whatever they consume. Can we do this? Can the Indomitable actually perform against organized pirates? Daeho thought about his crew, trained to the highest standards Earth could provide. He thought about the fighter pilots who flew with instinct and skill rather than computer assistance. He thought about the thousands of tons of ordnance in his magazines and the redundant systems built into every section of his ship. They're about to learn something important, he said. Just because something is simple doesn't mean it's not effective. Sometimes the oldest methods work best because they've been tested in actual blood and fire, not just simulations. Ji-won managed a tight smile. I hope you're right. Earth's future in this coalition depends on it. Back on the Indomitable, Daeho gathered his senior officers. He looked at each face, seeing determination mixed with uncertainty. These were good people, well-trained and professional, but they had never faced actual combat against an enemy that wanted them dead. In 3 days, we deploy to the Forge Sector, he told them. The aliens think we're primitive. They think our ship is a relic. They're wrong, and we're going to prove it. Make sure every system is ready. Every pilot is sharp. Every gun is loaded. We're going to show the galaxy what humans can do. As his officers dispersed to their duties, Daeho stood alone on the bridge, looking out at the gleaming alien vessels surrounding his battered practical carrier. They had no idea what was coming. None of them did. War, real war, was humanity's oldest profession, and school was about to be in session. 2 weeks after the battle, the UHNS Indomitable limped into dock at Nexus Prime. The damage was impossible to hide. Whole sections of the forward hull were missing, replaced by temporary patches that glowed with the heat of barely contained systems. Scorch marks covered the armor plating, and the carrier moved with a slight list that spoke of damaged internal structure. But Captain Daeho Kim stood on his bridge with quiet pride. His ship was battered, but it had survived. More importantly, his crew had proven themselves in the harshest test possible, real combat against an enemy that wanted them dead. The alien vessels that had mocked the Indomitable on its first arrival now kept a respectful distance. Several sent formal commendations, praising the human crew's courage and effectiveness. The change in attitude was so dramatic that Ensign Banhua Shin commented on it. Sir, we're receiving docking priority from station control. They're clearing the main berth for us. That's different from last time, Daeho noted. Yes, sir. Last time they put us in an outer berth, away from the important ships. Now they're treating us like a flagship. As the Indomitable docked, Ambassador Ji-won Park came aboard for the first time since before the battle. She walked through the corridors, seeing the repair crews still working, the temporary seals on damaged sections, the crew members moving with the careful efficiency of people who had been tested and found themselves capable. She found Daeho on the bridge, overseeing the final docking procedures. Ambassador, he greeted her. Welcome back. Ji-won looked around at the damaged but functional bridge. I've been reading the reports, all of them including the ones from Coalition observers. Daeho, you've changed everything. We just fought a battle. You did more than that. You changed how they see us. The Galactic Coalition has been built on the idea that technological advancement equals superiority in all things. You proved that experience, training, and tactical flexibility can be just as important. Chief Engineer Taewon Bayek approached, datapad in hand. Captain, the station is offering repair assistance. They want to send their engineering teams aboard to help with reconstruction. Daeho raised an eyebrow. And? Sir, with respect, I'd prefer to do the major work ourselves. Their technology is impressive, but I trust human engineering. We know this ship better than anyone. However, I wouldn't mind borrowing some of their materials and power generators. That would speed things up considerably. Make it so, Daeho said, but maintain full oversight of all repairs. This is still our ship. The Coalition Assembly was scheduled to meet in 3 days, giving the human crew time to clean up and prepare. During that time, something unexpected happened. Alien crew members from other ships started visiting the Indomitable, asking for tours and explanations of human military doctrine. Commander Hyunjin Lee found himself giving impromptu lectures on fighter tactics to a group of coalition pilots. They were fascinated by the concept of manual flight and independent decision-making. But how do you coordinate without constant AI communication? One pilot asked. Hyunjin smiled. We train together until we can predict what our wingmates will do. We develop hand signals and voice brevity codes, and most importantly, we trust each other to make good decisions independently. You can't wait for a computer to tell you what to do when someone's shooting at you. Lieutenant Sun Hee-cho demonstrated her fighter to a group of alien engineers. They were amazed by its simplicity. No quantum processors? One asked. No neural interface? Just controls, instruments in my hands, Sun Hee replied. This fighter does exactly what I tell it to do, nothing more, nothing less. If the computers fail, I can still fly it manually. Can you say the same about your ships? The alien engineer admitted he could not. Even the pirate prisoners became a source of interest. When coalition security officers came to transfer them to proper detention facilities, they found the prisoners in surprisingly good condition. They had been fed, their injuries treated, and they had been held in cells that, while secure, were not deliberately cruel. One of the security officers spoke with the human guards. You treated them well, the guard shrugged. They're prisoners of war. We follow the rules of warfare. Just because they're our enemies doesn't mean we torture them or let them die. Many species would not show such restraint. Maybe that's what makes us different. On the day of the assembly meeting, Daeho put on his dress uniform, making sure every detail was perfect. The uniform was simple compared to the elaborate garments the aliens wore, but it carried the weight of centuries of military tradition. Jiwon wore her diplomatic robes, elegant but understated. They walked together to the assembly hall, flanked by an honor guard of human marines. The corridors that had seemed so intimidating on their first visit now felt different. Aliens stepped aside respectfully, some even nodding and greeting. The assembly hall was packed. Every delegate was present, and observers from dozens of species filled the upper galleries. High Commander Veltros stood at the center, his crystalline form repaired but still showing faint cracks from the battle damage. Honored delegates, Veltros began, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber. We are here to discuss Earth's petition to join our Mutual Defense Pact. 2 weeks ago, I stood in this chamber and dismissed human capabilities. I called their ship a museum piece. I suggested their technology was primitive and their methods outdated. He paused and the hall was silent. I was wrong. A murmur ran through the assembly. Veltros continued. The pirates in the Forge sector had been operating successfully against coalition forces for over a year. They understood our tactics, knew our weaknesses, and exploited our reliance on technology. When we walked into their ambush, our quantum sensors failed to detect them. Our energy shields proved ineffective against their weapons. Our coordinated AI systems became liabilities when jammed. He turned to face Daeho and Jiwon. The humans faced the same ambush with technology we considered outdated. Their conventional radar detected threats our quantum sensors missed. Their kinetic weapons bypassed defenses our energy weapons could not penetrate. Their pilots flew manually when our AI systems failed. And their ship, that primitive supercarrier, survived a direct hit from a weapon that should have destroyed it. Veltros moved closer to the human delegation. Captain Kim, would you explain to the assembly how the Indomitable survived that plasma lance strike? Daeho stepped forward. The ship was built assuming it would be damaged. We use multiple layers of armor, because we know the first layer will fail. We compartmentalize everything because we know sections will be breached. We train damage control teams to fight fires and seal leaks because we know systems will break. It's not advanced, but it's effective. And your fighters? Asked Counselor Thrix. How did your pilots achieve such remarkable coordination? Training, Daeho replied simply. Thousands of hours of training until their responses become instinct. We don't rely on AI because humans have been fighting for survival since before we had technology. That experience is coded into how we prepare for war. Another delegate spoke up. But surely you acknowledge that your technology is inferior to ours. Daeho considered his answer carefully. In many ways, yes. Your ships are faster, your weapons more powerful, your sensors more precise. But technology is just a tool. What matters is how you use it, and whether you can adapt when it fails. Human military doctrine is built on the assumption that nothing works perfectly. We plan for failure and train to overcome it. Admiral Mi-Young-han appeared via holographic projection from Earth. If I may add something, honored delegates, humanity has fought wars for our entire recorded history. We know warfare in a way that species who achieved peace through technological dominance cannot. We're not proud of our violent past, but we've learned from it. We know that the side with better technology doesn't always win. The side with better training, better tactics, and stronger will to fight often overcomes technological disadvantages. Veltros nodded. Which is precisely why I am recommending strongly that Earth be accepted into the Galactic Coalition's Mutual Defense Pact. Not just accepted, but welcomed. We need what humanity offers. What do we offer? Jiwan asked. Perspective, Veltros replied. We've become soft, relying on our technology to keep us safe. You remind us that safety comes from preparation, from training, from the willingness to sacrifice for others. Captain Kim placed his ship between mine and certain destruction. He had no shields to protect him, only armor and courage. That is the kind of ally we need. The assembly debated for an hour, but the outcome was never really in doubt. When the vote came, it was unanimous. Earth was accepted into the Galactic Coalition with full membership and all associated rights and responsibilities. But there was more. We would like to request, Counselor Thrix said, that Earth provide military advisors to Coalition forces. We wish to learn your tactics, your training methods, and your approach to warfare. In exchange, we will share our technology and help you advance your capabilities. Jiwan looked at Daiho, who gave a slight nod. Earth accepts, she said. We look forward to this exchange of knowledge and culture. After the formal ceremony, there was a reception on the observation deck.